Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode, is it five now? I think it's five or six.
Six.
Episode six of Rambling About AI, where we ramble on about AI for half an hour, sometimes an hour, somewhere in between in there. But yeah, today we're going to talk about software as a service or SaaS and maybe the death of SaaS is maybe the topic of today. Hearing a lot of talk about that topic really about is SaaS going to be dead? Because now with AI, you can basically spin up a whole product like a SaaS product in a day or whatever, and people are saying, oh, I don't need to use this product anymore now. Let's say Salesforce, for example, I don't need to use it anymore because I can just vibe code it and build it myself. You hear a lot of that stuff on LinkedIn right now, and it's kind of like, and then there's obviously a big backlash saying, no way, that's never going to happen. And so really, yeah, we're just going to discuss that and explore that topic. So I know you've got some thoughts on it, Philip. So you want to tell us what you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean, when you make a claim like SaaS is dead, which is kind of provocative, it gets you podcast listens. Uh, it definitely have to drill into what you mean when you talk about SaaS, because SaaS, I think, by the literal definition, just means it's software you're paying for with a license instead of as a one-time cost. But we all know that SaaS really is a proxy for this kind of cloud-based, very highly scalable, very sort of broadly consumed version of software that is generally bought on recurring subscriptions. And so the economics are different than when it's done as a tool that you download. But you get very different versions of what it means to have competition. There's the very low end, which is I'm just a random person. I have an idea, a problem I want to solve. Does a SaaS solve it for me? The boundary for closing that was previously very expensive. Now it's very cheap. The other version of it is I'm a corporation and I'm trying to buy software that sort of scales along with me. And so I need big partners to do that. But those big partners make software that isn't necessarily for me, right? It's for a broad type of person. And so can I continue to have that market presence and use my own like heft as a defensive strategy versus are people going to come for that and make hyper specialized versions of the same thing that I'm selling? But because the barrier to entry is so easy, they can just do that all day long.
Yeah. So I mean, I've been doing software as a service for. I think I built my first SaaS in 2011. So a little ways ago. And obviously back then, you had Basecamp and you had all these, and everyone was charging 29 a month. It's kind of like almost like it didn't really matter what your product or service was. It was 29 a month. That was kind of the thing. And so yeah, I built my own product in project management and charged about 29 a month, 39, and scaled up to like a 99 a month. And now it's like people are still trying to do the same thing. You still see that kind of monthly pricing. And actually, I'm trying to launch my own SaaS right now. I'm just messing around with my own little SaaS business. And I was looking at the pricing and I was like doing like 20 a month, 50 a month. And I was just telling my friend about it. He's an investor. And I was like, what do you think about all this? What do you think about my pricing? And I was kind of just like thinking from a sort of a 2015 perspective in my mind. And then he was like, you know what, man, like software is, I just don't know if like anyone can build software now. I just don't know about that model anymore. Like as an investor, because he's always thinking, like he says, I'm trying to think 3 to 5 years ahead, right? He's like, and he has this analogy. He's like, I want to be where the puck lands. If you know a hockey term, I want to be where the puck lands, not where it's being hit. I like that analogy. So he's thinking, a few years time, software as we know it right now. I mean, anyone can build it. So to charge $20, $30, $40, $50 or whatever to make it accessible to people. Well, the software is so cheap to build now. So it's not really like you need to have a cheap subscription, right? It's different. It's changing. It's changing so much even last year. What do you think about like just the pricing model now with SaaS, when it comes to like selling for those prices?
Yeah, I think it's especially interesting in the mindset of SaaSes that are coming that are now possible because of large language models, because the pricing mechanism for those is very much consumption based. So you're paying by token. And the model that people want to use when they use the term SaaS is a monthly subscription. So you see that tension played out. And we've been talking about in previous episodes of, how do you take a service that is essentially consumption price from the provider standpoint, but charge a subscription price for it?
Yeah, that's called
And
the cost of AI. I think there's
the
episode.
the cost of AI.
Yeah.
It's complicated and messy, and because so much of this is unknown, you get this fluctuation and it starts at one, it pivots to the other because just nobody really knows what's going on. I mean, that idea that you could charge a subscription price and that was now a scalable model that drove it. that was based on the idea of having a really low marginal cost for serving the incremental customer, right? It was like you build your CRUD app that solves some specific problem for a lot of people, and adding people into it doesn't really drive your cost because it's just running whatever software you built. But you build something on AI, adding more people into it very much does drive your cost. So it's a lot harder to rely on freemium as a distribution
Right,
strategy.
and
It's a
that was
lot harder to rely on steady subscription revenue.
freemium was the thing, back then. Like I said, in the 2015 era, everything was freemium, and then you had that like next tier on would be like the premium account, the pro. It's actually interesting because when you're talking about that, I just know because I have an X developer account on Twitter X, and they used to charge a monthly fee. It was free, premium, and then it was I think it then jumped right up to 200 a month. There was no like in between. It was like 200, and then I think it was like 5,000 a month. Isn't that crazy? So there's basically only two plans. It was like 200 a month or 5,000. Then what that did is it separated the people that were just tinkering for those that are like, seriously, I'm going to use this. And I think there was probably very few people paying the 5,000. If they were, they were obviously going to use it for anyway. So that obviously created a huge barrier, even for people like me trying to develop. I did actually pay the 200 a month. And I canceled my subscription because I was like, I don't want to do this right now. I don't know how much my usage is going to be for this product. This was my new startup I'm messing around with. Anyway, like last week, I logged in and I actually noticed the tokens it was saying unauthorized or something. I was like, what's going on? I looked in and they changed their whole pricing model and they'd taken off my subscription and it's gone to a usage model now, which is interesting. So I was like, huh. So the old pricing now is still there as legacy, but they're now doing it on a usage basis, just like Anthropic, just like OpenAI, where you go and you put your credit card, you have an auto refill if you want. But yeah, it's basically usage based. And I haven't really used enough to see how, with my usage on my app, what it's going to be like in terms of usage. But these are guys who are another AI platform, and they are charging a usage-based pricing, not your typical monthly SaaS pricing.
Yeah, I mean, your flexibility you have and how you set up the pricing is very much driven by the flexibility of that cost structure. I mean, when you have 20% of your costs that are variable and 80% of it are fixed, it's a lot easier to have just steady subscription pricing because yeah, there's some variation, but how much can 20% vary like over the course of it? So you can just set your capabilities out, you have a fixed amount of investment in it, and then you have some sense of like, how do I bifurcate my customer base? Who's willing to pay more? What features do I put together into these packages and I sell these things? And that's SaaS. That's what everybody knows SaaS as. But flip that model, 80% of your cost is variable because it's going out in tokens. 20% of it is fixed because now it was trivial to build the company, right? Before it was hard to build the company. And so that was where the expense was. But once you had built it, you kind of just had steady costs. Now it's easy to build the company, but most of your costs are variable because you're dropping those token costs. So it's no surprise then that the old model of doing it on subscriptions has fallen apart, and to the extent that you call that SaaS, that's how you get roped into SaaS is dead
And I
right
think
there.
about like lifetime value. That was the thing on SaaS, wasn't it? It was like lifetime. You don't think about the 19 a month or the 49 a month. You think the fact that they're going to be with us for, let's say, 2 or 3 years, and then that gives us the LTV, and they can calculate that based on how long people are sticking around for, what the churn is like, all that kind of stuff. Expansion revenue too. So like if you go from a 29-month plan to a 49-month plan, the chances are most people, X amount of people will do that. So then you calculate your LTV, and then it's like what, two, three, $4,000 for a customer,
Yeah,
but now you could charge $3,000 or $4,000 for an app and they've got it for life
and it's
with,
done.
with,
Yeah,
vibe- with, sorry, with AI assisted
yeah,
product development, not vibe coding. Um,
yeah. No, I think the ability to then turn around and apply that to um, how you sort of build. Hold on, let me cut this part out. I was trying to say something.
Philip never loses his train of thought.
It was like right there, and then I lost it as I was talking. Um, And I think that's where it has the biggest economic risk associated with it, because once you start talking about long-term value, the companies that would have borrowed money to buy these companies, these very large SaaS companies, a lot of them were acquired leveraged buyouts over the last couple of years, 5, 10 years or so, because the model was so good, it was so steady. You'd had this very clear LTV, and then you could do the math to buy that into a borrowing cost, loan, and a bond. And so a lot of financing instruments and debt is wrapped up around an assumption about what the LTV is of these companies based on what it's been in the past. So something comes along and threatens the fundamental underlying economics of how they work in a way that makes those LTV values numbers look weaker. Well, that then causes a whole different set of problems with the downstream effects of large scale financing falling apart for these large companies. So that to me is, when the fear inherent in saying that SaaS is dead is not necessarily that these businesses are dead as much as it is that the debt that underlies them is going to cause such a huge problem when the LTVs even incrementally change that it's going to be like they all died, even if it hasn't really changed that much.
One thought I was just thinking about in my head just then is like, you got software as a service. There's two things, software and service, right? The service element ain't going to go anywhere because an AI is not going to really, I mean, it can do chatbots, but it's not really going to serve us that well. It can't really serve like we can. So that element is still there. Like, even if I build an app for someone and it's not a SaaS app, it's like, they're going to pay me 5 grand, which is maybe the LTV, right? They pay me 5 grand to build something. I build it for them, it's theirs, right? I've still got a service that, well, they've got a service to their customers. It's still going to be a service, right? You're not just going to go like, there's your software. But the software piece, as you say, which previously would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop, and therefore you need to figure out how many lifetime values you're going to get, how much you need to sell over a subscription basis. That's all changed.
Yeah.
So the software, as I was saying earlier, my friend, because I was basically saying, what do you? He was like, I've got to think about what I want to invest in, like over the next few years, and software is changing. Like, I don't know if I'm going to invest in software as a service businesses. Um, I don't really think he ever told me what his thoughts are in terms of what to invest, but he kind of was leaning towards more like, I should be focusing more on these big platforms, Anthropic. He actually is a developer. He's actually an investor in OpenAI. I think it's really hard to become an investor in AI. You have to
Yeah,
have
you
an
had to be
in.
there at the right time.
But yeah,
Yeah.
anyway, so he's saying, look, that his for him the puck is where OpenAI and Anthropic and all this cool stuff they're doing. But the SaaS model, you know, John Doe, who wants to create his SaaS business, which is basically a chat GPT wrapper a lot of the time.
Yeah.
That's not where the investment's going right now. So I'm kind of, there's a lot of thoughts there, but
Yeah.
what would you say in terms of like this thing on maybe the investment piece in terms of big money and where that's going in in the SaaS world?
I mean, to the extent that it becomes less investable because of the way the economics work out, I think you're right. It it plays to a certain kind of business that um, was kind of monetizing friction that could be overcome by kind of putting standardized processes into place and forcing people to follow the standardized version of the process. Um, because it was SaaS and it was up in the cloud, it wasn't something like they used to solve these problems with access databases and things like that because it was so customizable. People would customize them, and so part of the value in the SaaS was you had this sort of standardized way of doing things, and you fit everything in that frame because it was built, one for everything. But you still are anchored when you talk about, how the business changes. You are anchored to a model that is a service. It has to be a service. There is no version of an LLM based program right now that anyone has that is not a service. Because to not be a service, it means you have to run the model totally and completely locally 100% of the time. That's the only way it would be not a service. So if you're stuck as a service, but then at the same time, you can't use subscription pricing as your main driver. And so you're bound to the old version of what this had to be while also being restricted from using how the old version worked out paying for itself. So now we're in this world vacillating back and forth between usage and subscription because they realize it's not exactly the same thing, but they're still trying to find a way to like have their cake and eat it too, as opposed to probably the answer is you either think at another dimension than that. So it's not a trade-off between the two. It's some further version of the service where you're realizing more of the value in a way that is more a trade-off you'd make in real time rather than a business model, right? That might be one way.
I wonder what consumers are thinking right now, like what their opinion is on, like maybe they're coming into this game when they're in the younger generation and they're coming in, they don't really know what that traditional SaaS model looks like, and they're just saying, oh yeah, I have to pay, put my credit card in and buy do top ups and things. Um, actually reminds me, I just had a crazy thought. When I got my first mobile phone, everything was pay as you go. Did you guys when you back in the
Yeah.
when I was very
Yeah.
young, you'd get a phone,
It's
it was pay as you
prepaid.
go. You just get a little card and you just top it up every
They
time.
used to charge when people called you, remember? Yeah, when people call you and it
I'm not
cost you
that
like
old.
10 cents,
I'm
you
just
get
kidding.
mad when, people call you.
But yeah, like
So
you top up your phone and then you'd run out token, credits or whatever you call it, money, and then you'd have to man re-top it up. And then they brought out the subscriptions. You pay, so much a month. You're like, oh great, and you get unlimited minutes and all that kind of thing. Um, but now, yeah, it's kind of gone back to that kind of usage based model. And I'm just wondering what people are expecting now when they come to a service and they're told to pay for it. Like I don't know, like and what the research is on that right now.
I think the reason why it's even so hard to figure that out is because there's such a difference between the way that AI is marketed to the consumer and then like the actual experience of using it. It'd be like if it was a 1 and then you promised that it was a 10 and then somebody used it and it turned out to be like a 6. 6 is still pretty good compared to 1, right? But it's also not 10. If you're not really marketing to people in a way that allows them to make an assessment like that, and you're just doing it off vibes, then you're just kind of like betting that nobody's going to pay enough attention or that they're going to be kind of not tricked, but you sort of sold them this idea of a 10, they got a 6. What you're really betting is that the 6 isn't going to be so bad that they're going to then detach from the service completely. Because as long as they don't, you've won. You've accomplished the goal. You've signed up a subscriber. So I think it's that dynamic that plays out between
But
those
they
two.
just don't know what they're gonna pay though. They don't know what they're gonna pay.
They don't know what they're going to pay. They don't.
It's not
It's not that
clear.
they don't want to. It's not that they don't know what they want to pay for what you're going to give them. It's they don't know what it's going to take to get the result they have in their head. Right? They don't know how much that's gonna cost. And when you show them a Sora video and go, "This is the easiest thing in the world," in their head, they're thinking that's gonna cost $1. Well, actually, that person sat there and iterated over and over and over again, for a long time to get that picture perfect one. Actually costs $100. You go in to something thinking it's gonna cost you $1 and it costs you $100, you're not gonna be disappointed. You're just never gonna get there. They're just not gonna spend the $100. If they thought they were gonna get it for $1, they're not gonna spend that 100
It's
times.
almost like the risk has gone more to the consumer now than to the company, because back in the SaaS days, when it was 49 a month, you didn't know if a power user was gonna, like, use it so much that it was gonna end up costing the business more than the 49 a month, right? I mean,
Yeah.
in very few cases, most of the time, it's so profitable, it wasn't an issue. Whereas now, like, the risk is being passed on to the consumer. You've got to pay for your tokens so that we don't make a loss,
So we don't yeah, exactly.
It's
Exactly.
flipped, like,
Yeah.
y
Because you can't detach. Like, you want the subscription from a marketing standpoint because it's easy to sell, but you can't use it from a economic standpoint because that's not how your costs work. So you either price your subscription cost so high, right, that it covers essentially over and under that, and you set that price there. You see this dynamic play out anytime there's a main driver is a marginal cost and you want to charge a flat rate for it. It always like works the same way. You end up tiering that into like 3 phases and then you price it over what the average is there. And that overage is your margin. And then what you're hoping for is that nobody gets the lower tier and then figures out how to get the higher tier value out of that. Right. And so you need to build your model in these very like restrictive ways to keep people in these little boxes. And that's what you're getting, right? That's why it's 60 and 200. And the easiest way to do that is to map your cost directly to it. That's what they do, right? It's 60, but that's because they've mapped an exact amount of cost to that, right? The moment you step out of this very, very clear connection between the two, and it's not about just paying for tokens, it's about delivering some service, that gets a lot fuzzier in terms of how people experience it. And I think that's what makes it so hard.
Yeah. And we've talked a lot about pricing, and we spent most of this podcast talking about pricing and stuff. That's my fault. But we're talking about like software as a service as a thing.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone that's coming into this and they want to build an app or something like that, and they've been told, oh, you've got to charge a monthly subscription, or they've been told, oh, I built a SaaS and they sold it for $1 million or whatever, and they've been told that this is a model that works. They go, okay, and they come in and they go, all right, so what do I charge? What is this model? What do I do here? What would you say to that person based on what your experience is right now? And where do you see that model going?
Yeah. So I would say, there's no TAM too small at this point. I mean,
Total addressable market.
the amount of people who could buy your product was previously kind of the main driver of whether it got built, and the total possible sort of scenario that's happened, total addressable market, right? Can you reach that market? Do you have the distribution channels to do that? Do you understand it? Do you have the relationship? That's a very different question, right? And when you have those things, you have advantage, you have an opportunity. And so I would say if you're going to start something, I've said this exact phrase. It has never been easier to start something. It's never been harder to scale something, but it's never been easier to start something. So when you go to start it, you have to be smart. You have to not bet on being able to scale as a measure of success. It's got to work out of the gate. It can't be the model loses early and as we get scale, we'll make it up. That model doesn't work anymore because scale is more expensive now. But find the smallest possible audience that you feel like you can get to, that you can talk to, that you can show your product to and get them to buy it. Build it for them, build it enough where it makes sense, and then move on to something else. And you'll just see this flowering of these different businesses, and they will all be SaaS. They will all be software that is being purchased as a service. It'll just look very different from what we know
So
today.
in that sense, the pricing really is irrelevant.
The pricing just becomes much more of a what is that very specific type of person willing to pay. If you are selling something in the education market, your price is going to be based on semesters. If you're selling it to the kids that are in the other parents that are in your kids' basketball team, you're going to sell it by season. It's like it's just going to get really, really, really hyper specialized with the size.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the old days, it was like you're trying to make a pricing model that works for as many people as possible. One size fits all. I want to charge $19 a month because I want to try and get as many people into this thing as possible. Lowest barrier, lowest amount of friction, right? Whereas, like you say, now it's like, well, you've got such a small niche that you're targeting. Like you say, the pricing is kind of whatever they're willing to pay, whatever is the right thing to pay. Like you say, it's kind of based on the value they're getting, and it's just very different. It's like very, very focused now on specific verticals.
Yeah.
And I remember back when I was doing it, doing SaaS, it was much more like it's better to just create something that's going to be. Obviously, you need to have your like vague, let's call it vertical. Like for me, it was small businesses, right? And that were like agencies, right? They were trying to like improve their time tracking, be more productive. So there was still kind of an area I was focusing on, but it was still pretty broad, right? And I would, I didn't want to build something for a very specific niche, like, I don't know, HVAC companies in Jacksonville, Florida, whereas now it seems to be, you don't really want to create that one size fits all because that's been covered, it's done, and you're not going to see, likely going to see much success.
Yeah.
Unless you're building something completely unique, which, I mean, I don't.
It's just less and less likely. I mean, basically all you're just drawing is can you distribute it? I mean, at the end of the day, right, is like it's smaller, there's a smaller addressable market, but I know who those people are. I can talk to them. I can just say,
Exactly.
"Can you buy this?" Right?
Exactly.
And whereas somebody else can't. And that gives me an advantage.
And that's what I've been saying to people that I've been talking to about. It's like they've been asking that same question. I'm like, well, you need to find who's in your network right now. Who are you already serving? And again, in the HVAC industry, be like, oh, well, I've got this group of clients, and I do these. I built the software that helps me like check. You know, what do you get in HVAC? What are those things?
The filters,
No,
the thermostat. I can name parts of an HVAC for a while if you want me to.
the things in an HVAC that you stick the
Yeah,
probes
yeah, the
in,
thing.
and
Yeah,
it,
pick the pro.
all the HVAC guys are going, oh, fuck. Yeah. Anyway, so software that basically can check that stuff, monitoring, right? So software,
Yeah, yeah,
and then they already know these people, and they're building their software. I was like, great, cool. Well, you charge your people, and they're probably going to pay you a lot more than if you charge $4.99 on an app store.
yeah,
They're going to pay you a lot more for that, and then you're not just building for them, you're building for other people in that network. And they probably know someone in that network too. And then the word of mouth is better because it's much more personal. It's much more like of a network type thing. So yeah, anyway, I'm just saying that like this goes back to that old referral thing, know your industry you're targeting specifically, and know the people involved, and get in front of people's faces.
yeah. I think even as we're talking through, I'm thinking about the evolution of how these models are going to work. And because so much of this is so unknown, and because the raw output of the tokens is so impressive, like at first glance, that it kind of makes sense that a lot of this stuff would be usage based because it is so tied to the cost structure. But maybe all that means is that it hasn't evolved yet. And you'll see these use cases evolve from usage based pricing where the tokens consume 80% of the cost of delivering the service, but then the investment won't be in building the service because the service is already built. The investment will be in shifting more and more of the cost from marginal into fixed, right? Shifting more back toward what you consider to be comfortable from a subscription model
And
standpoint.
the other thing you could do is you could pass the cost on to the client. So like
You could shift it up and down in the from
right,
channel
and I
partners.
know
Yeah.
that some of the kind of more custom work that I've been doing has kind of been more like, look, here's the kind of a monthly retainers type fee, and then any AI usage will swallow some of it. But if it goes beyond it, then there's going to be something in the contract that states that you're going to have to pay that based on usage, essentially. So
Yeah.
it's software as a service in the sense that you're paying us a monthly fee. We're going to do support for your product that we built for you. But then anything on top, any AI usage with tokens could be variable, and
Yeah.
and you're going to have to pay that if it's going to cost more and more. Or you just say, here's the OpenAI account, set it up, and you put your credit card in there, and then you're gonna have to pay whatever it costs.
Yeah. A lot of my sort of time and research has been in that journey that people go through to do exactly that, which is to once you kind of have it and you're thinking, do I need a model to do all these things? Can I build tools? Should I simplify the process? There's a more advanced model now. Do I just plug my existing process in? Can I simplify it? That's what I'm basically describing there. Used to be just process optimization. Now it's a business model evolution. Because now you're talking about how I've got this target quality level, right? That's whatever I built off the best models I could at the time. That's what everybody builds out of the gate. That's how you get going. So then it's about how do I start to evolve my business model from being so primarily dried on that from a cost structure standpoint to being more of a subscription service. But you'll do that by tweaking it while controlling for quality. So that to me is a whole framework and methodology that hasn't been built yet because we haven't even really arrived at that level where everybody's built models that work really well and have shifted into the optimization phase. But it's not.
Yeah.
It's got
Yeah, every new SaaS startup is gonna be leveraging AI now, like everything. It's
to
like the
underlie everything.
fundamental platform that everything's gonna be built on. You're gonna be not only just using one framework, you're gonna be using OpenAI, you're gonna be using OpenAI, Anthropic, Gemini, and all the other ones too. You might even have some local LLMs running too. So it's like it's going to be the standard for every SaaS startup now that it's gonna be leveraging a platform, an AI platform,
Yeah.
which is gonna mean that costs are gonna have to be figured out.
Well, and you'll see, especially as the models get more capable, as the top line keeps growing higher and higher, the cost of the baseline for any given baseline level of performance falls. So eventually, right, you will be able to shift toward models that have a fixed cost, that you sort of have a fixed cost for the server and the models on the server, and then you just use it yourself. And then that's an example of kind of shifting the cost base, right? You've shifted it from purely consumption to a fixed price on a given time frame. So now you have the ability to come in and go, okay, which of my processes can I turn over to this new thing? And doing that in like a very planned out way. That's how your model would evolve from there, and what your definition of service would turn into.
What do you think about like the idea that right now because these platforms are so new? I mean, we're talking a year or two, whatever, right? The fact that they could just suddenly charge what it costs for us to use tokens. Now you think about like Amazon and hosting and stuff like that. That's been around for a long time, so people know. I've set up an S3 bucket or something. I know what it's going to cost, right? You've got a very good idea. It's never going to just skyrocket, and right? I mean, Amazon server costing and all that kind of stuff. You kind of know what it's going to be, even if things grow and you have to increase your amount of servers and all that kind of stuff. But with LLMs, being so new, do you think that people should be worried about the fact that they could just skyrocket? Because they don't know. What are people that are building these businesses all around AI, or as I say, most people are now? Should there be a concern, a worry about that?
I mean, look, this is the exact same worry that goes into the cloud structure that drives AWS in general, right? You can get on-demand compute for your services within Amazon, but it's more expensive than if you just pay and have the service all the time. So every company that's out there is worried that cloud bill is going to suddenly explode because some part of their business is going to become really popular and it uses some part of it where it scales and they didn't realize it. And but that was always true with on-demand compute or anything that's like you need to get this now and you want it to sort of move up and down. Unless that's scheduled and planned out, it's going to cost more. The flexibility has a cost.
But things are changing so much more rapidly now in the AI space. Like, I still feel like with servers, yes, sure. If you suddenly get a load of traffic to your website, you have to pay more money. Oh well, you can swallow that, right? But with the way that pricing is being built around these platforms right now, with the tokens and stuff, they can just fluctuate. Like, I mean, Opus 4.6 when it came out, like, I don't even know what I'm paying half the time. I just see my bill go like up. I'm like, oh, that's because it's a new model, and it's because they're charging this or charging that. It's almost like, yeah,
Yeah.
they can charge whatever they want, and that's probably a little bit concerning. It would be concerning for me if I was building a whole startup around, using AI and thinking, okay, well, I know it cost me like, $15 cost maybe per user per month, and I can charge $50 and making a profit. But then like they bring out a new model and you're like, well, I have to use this model for this new feature that I brought out. And then all of a sudden they rip up the costs for the tokens.
Yeah. And you can't just charge a different subscription all the
No,
time. Just
because they're locked in. The client's like, what?
yeah.
Oh, but no, it's using a new model. I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. That that variability, especially the sort of extremity that it can do, like how much variance there is there. An interesting difference between using the analogy for the like cloud compute on demand versus sort of renting bare metal servers, you know, the degree to which fluctuation is kind of happening suddenly. Like a server will spike from usage because something they did went viral. And so it drew like a bunch of inbound traffic. But it would do that like once and then everybody would understand that because there was this, whatever was happening was happening. But
And then you do
with
a
tokens,
post-mortem.
yeah, but you'd expect it to vary within a particular range. But I feel like tokens all over the
Hmm.
because you engage with the tool because you have some problem you want to solve, and if that problem has a cost for the tool you're using, then you don't know how many times a month somebody's going to have that problem, which either puts you back in the same mode of I got to cap their usage and then deal with this dissatisfaction that comes along with that, or price more to those fluctuations and a way to try to cushion the blow on my bottom line.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's difficult. It's a very difficult landscape to navigate right now. I mean, it's tough, pricing these things out, doing this software as a service thing right now. I think for my recommendation, if someone was asking me that question, like, what do I do about pricing? What do I do about the software as a service thing? I would definitely say, kind of lean along what we were talking about earlier about sort of making sure the client's very much aware of what it could potentially cost and kind of passing on the cost to the client so that you don't end up getting swallowing a ton. Because I think that's okay, right? That's fair because the client knows what they're getting. If they're getting an AI platform, they know it's potentially very powerful and it's a new technology, right? Or you just don't use AI and just have a very bland algorithmic.
Yeah, you know, old school.
But yeah, I would say that. I think obviously they should do their research on all of it, but I think not just charging 49 a month. Don't do that anymore. Like in that sense, software as a service is dead, in my opinion. In that sense of just being blindly saying, "Oh, it's 79 a month," without really, because you knew that you could make a profit pretty easily, even if it cost a lot in those days and back in the day. Whereas now, it's just you can't do that. You have to be thinking about what the cost of your service is. A lot of time it's time and support. It's easy, you can figure that out. But with the server costs, well, not server costs, the LLM costs now, you can't just blindly say it's 79 a month. You have to figure out a model that's going to work based on the usage of the LLM.
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah, and the more general way that I say it is just pricing and distribution become the factors because you have to price in a way that doesn't put you underwater. And so much of pricing is about bifurcating your market. It's about dialing in usage against cost. Like so much of it is wrapped up in that. And when people say the death of SaaS, I think you could also say it's the death of SaaS ability to price that way. Like it's not going to work. The tokens are going to cost too much money for everything to be a subscription. And you can call that an evolution in the pricing model. You can call it death of the old model. But anybody that's hanging on to that model is doing it because they're hanging on to a legacy.
There's
And
almost like
so new people, you can't do that.
there's like two elements of the SaaS that are dead or dying. one, yeah, you just talked about the old model of pricing is death, right? Is dying. Um, the software has become democratized. You know, you don't have. It's not like one person can create this amazing software. This company can create this software, and it's like, oh, I want that software. So in a sense, that is dying
Yeah.
because it's democratized. Anyone can build that software now. But the idea that the service element, if anything, now is even more prevalent because service is so critical now because it takes experts to know how to leverage these LLMs, how to use them, how to support them, how to inform the client how they work. Um, just the service is definitely not dead.
Yeah. You until it gets to the point that you can have a fully owned model on your phone that can do everything that you want to do without needing any incremental processing power or any cost to it, it's going to have a big driver for what that is.
Hmm.
Uh,
That's an
so
interesting thought right there.
yeah,
That's was that
it'll
10 years
come.
from now?
It'll come. It'll come.
That's where the
They'll
puck's
get
going to
small
land.
enough. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy to think like that.
Yeah.
So let's just play on that for a little bit. That'd be fun. Little.
Yeah.
So yeah. So the puck's going to land in 10 years' time. You just described something there.
Well, if it's happening for you before it goes there to the cloud version of the service, um, much of it is kind of repeating a similar framework than that happened before, where you see the repeated shifts between client and server architectures as the way software is built. Right in the very very beginning, it was servers, then it became about PCs, then it became about servers again with the cloud. You know, now it's about then the cloud servers sort of became blended with the desktop, right, and so they were kind of trying to position the same thing. AI comes along, AI very much has to be a cloud, but only because that's what the service requirements are, but it'll get pulled into blending with the desktop in the same way. And you'll see that as more of a hybrid model of software development now, where it's on your desktop, it's in the cloud, but it's kind of the same thing. And then it's just a matter of where the processing takes
What about the
place.
service element?
The service element to me is partly so the nature of the pricing, because subscription has a more service characteristic to it. But I think it also just means like you're not responsible for it running. It's going to do its thing. And you're a participant in that process, but you're not driving it. You're not owning it. You're not building it, pushing it. And I think that if you think of I think a really good analogy is the way the maker movement evolves, where you had these tools that were these 3D printing tools that were built to do rapid prototyping. Right. And so as an entrepreneur hat on, you look at these tools and you go, "Oh my God, it's going to create this explosion um, of of, of tools, product startups, because they're going to be able to so easily rapid prototype things and validate them. That there's going to be all these new things being built, and economically, that the whole prototyping industry works on 3D models now. So that part was absolutely true. But there was a second part that people said, "Oh, now anybody at home is also going to meet their needs by building their own bespoke objects with their 3D printers." And that did not happen. So you think about what's happening now with AI, right? Two versions of that. There's going to be a whole bunch of stuff happening, and people that were building can now build so much faster because they have these tools available. Look how amazing it is. Absolutely. That's what we're seeing. The second part is every single person going to be creating their own bespoke software now?
Right. It's like those videos that come out. They're like, look what I just created. There's a whole video of, let's not talk about Will Smith again, but like some crazy, like, oh, I just did this trailer with Tom Cruise and whatever. And everyone's like, wow. And then you can do this too. Do they actually do that video
Will they do
themselves?
it?
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like what you're saying, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There will be people that do it, and we're obviously those people. But we're the same people that saw 3D printers being used for prototyping and thought we could build our cool gadgets for using
It's like the
around now.
1% of the 1%
Yeah.
of the 1%.
Yeah, yeah. So but there are a lot more people that can do that, which again means there will be a lot more things started. There will be a lot more SaaSes. They will just be a lot smaller, a lot more niched, a lot more targeted audience standpoint, a lot more personal in nature because they reflect what you know better.
Yeah, one thing we haven't touched on, which I did want to cover actually, I know we're kind of running low on time, but is the idea that, like, so someone that's building a SaaS product that does a certain thing right now, let's say, that solves a specific problem in a specific vertical. I think one of the fears is that, like, maybe call it a wrapper if you want, but like the OpenAI will just suddenly create this feature or this leg to their business that completely wipes that out. I mean, we're seeing that happen a lot, right? Just like Google will have a lab and then they just go, "Oh, let's create this new thing," and it's like wipes out like 20 SaaS companies. Like, do you think that's going to be something that people should worry about? Like, do you think that if someone's got this idea and it hasn't been done yet, like I mean, let's for example, like a fitness app or something like that, and it's very specific. But if OpenAI or Anthropic was to just create this, oh, we just put this little fitness feature on one of our products, just wipes out a SaaS business. Do you think something people should be worried about, or do you think that it's like it's not so much about the feature, it's more about like the market or the marketing strategy, or maybe it's very. I have some thoughts on it, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a problem for a long time.
Yeah.
People worried about Google or Facebook or somebody like that developing a tool and sort of wiping them out. And, the past is littered with graveyards of companies that have died for like precisely that reason. I think it's probably still early enough that you're not necessarily going to be targeted by those companies. Like they're not looking at what you're doing and saying, I'm going to compete against you. They're looking at every possible application of their tool and thinking, where should we spend this giant cash pile that we have, right? So, you know, some companies, Anthropic, for example, go after use case. They really want to spend it to break into very specific markets for legal, right? So, but you saw OpenAI, other companies like that, they come at it more from, I want to sell to enterprises. Because enterprises have big, deep pockets, and my parent company, Microsoft, sells to a lot of enterprises. So they're coming up with ways of kind of doing that, but you don't see, I'm going to target that specific vertical that company is already in because there's an opportunity there and I'm going to apply my software to it. You don't see that. I don't know that you will probably see it because they have the same cannibalizing your customer problem that a lot of companies do when they set up like this is those companies that if you wait long enough and the rest of the world catches up in terms of utilizing your service at the maximum possible economic leverage, right? You coming along and saying, "Well, I also am going to do that." You are just cannibalizing your own revenue when you do that because now you're the one paying the token cost that the other company was paying. So you'll have that same basic tension in every one of these instances. The longer it goes on, the more and more people build on top of it, the harder and harder it'll be for an Anthropic to do that because more of their revenue then will be soaked up in that kind of a situation.
And the reason I mention it is just because I've been talking to someone who is trying to build an app in a specific space. Yeah, like I was just like, if one of these AI platforms was to create this little feature, this little button or whatever, just wipe them out. And I was just curious how that would affect them. And I think we chatted, and it was like, and they were obviously a little concerned about it. But my argument was that even if they did, people are still going to want to buy the service from you because you've got a better story behind it. You've got the narrative, and really that's what people buy. And I said that to her. I said, well, people buy stories. That's what they buy, the stories. They like the fact that it's this person's story and this is the problem they're solving, and you get to know that person. And I think people would rather. This is a marketing conversation. Really, this isn't really about specifically AI, but I would say that it's not a concern if you're marketing it in the right way, because I think people are still more like to buy when there's a story and there's a person behind it, and they're going to dedicate themselves to that particular and they'll stay dedicated to it because they have a heart and a passion for it. Rather than just Anthropic and be like, oh, we've just created this new feature. Everyone jumps onto that and go, oh, cool. I'm already paying $20 a month and now I can use this feature. I don't have to use this app. I don't think that's going to happen because then if they drop it, they're like, oh crap, I've just lost this. They're more likely to go with the company that's dedicated to it. So that was just my
Yeah.
take on it.
No, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think, like, as an investor, when you talk to companies that are struggling with that, the thing you just have to be sure is that that's not just the stock answer they give when people ask why. It's not gonna wreck their day. But, like, they've actually then said, "And here's the story I'm gonna tell, and here's the marketing I'm gonna do, and here's the people I've hired to do it." It's not just an excuse for why they're not gonna get stepped on by Google.
And again, that goes back to what we were saying earlier. SaaS isn't dead if you're in a SaaS for that specific, vertical in that specific niche.
Yeah.
So it's kind of really what this all boiling down to is like that's where I think people should be targeting again. Like, yeah, SaaS is not dead, but focus on the service in your particular vertical, solving a specific use case, and just put all of your energy and focus into that. Get passionate about that one thing it is you're trying to do, and that and then SaaS will be around for you for a while, at least.
Yeah,
Maybe 4 or 5 years.
it has never been more compelling to solve your own problems and then try to sell it to other people, same problem. There's almost no problem too small now.
So is SaaS dead?
I think SaaS as we know it today, the giant company, the steady subscription, the generic service that everybody uses differently, there's no world left for that. It's too easy to make software now. You don't need Salesforce. You don't need HubSpot. You can do it yourself now.
We should have just said that right at the beginning of the podcast. Would have saved ourselves
You can rearrange the
45 minutes of rambling.
rearrange the call.
I'll just cut that and put that right at the beginning. All right,
Yeah.
everyone. Well, thanks for listening, and obviously we'd love your comments and your thoughts because we just ramble. We don't know what we're talking about, but let us know what you think, and we'll see you next week for some other rambles.
Cheers.
Bye.
Ramble on.
Ramble on.
That's how I sign off.